So I Married an Axe Murderer turns 31. Mike Myers' classic comedy bombed at the box office back in the summer of 1993 before slowly building an enormous cult following.
Oh, did I mention the axe murderer?
Hello, sweetheart.
Missed me, darling?
And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to episode 262 of the Confessions of a Not-So-Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Thursday morning here with me in this very steamy day in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So yesterday, there were two movie anniversaries the same day. The Lost Boys, my favorite vampire film, The Living Daylights, my favorite James Bond film, with my favorite James Bond, Timothy Dalton, were actually released on the exact same day, July 31st, 1987. So it's not just an on this day, it's on this exact same fucking day. So I missed an important on this day, even more so for Gen Xers. So this will be happy belated 31st anniversary to the release date of Mike Myers' follow-up to Wayne's World, which kind of came, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but it was an enormous, runaway, massive box office hit when it landed. It wasn't even spring 92. Memory tells us it was spring 92. It was released before that. And it hit the box office at, I guess it was a bit of a soft time, because Basic Instinct, White Men Can't Jump, My Cousin Vinny, the three other Gen X standards from that era, they came out in like March, April. Wayne's World just fucking cleaned up. And So I Married an Axe Murderer is Mike Myers' follow-up. This is years before Austin Powers and even more years before Shrek, which originally was supposed to use the vocal talents of Chris Farley. When Chris Farley passed, DreamWorks had to scramble, and history is grateful that they decided to go with Mike Myers, who is just incredible. But Mike Myers' So I Married an Axe Murderer had the misfortune of coming out at the worst possible time in the worst possible summer for the kind of movie that it aspires to be. And in my opinion, and the opinion of, and it's got an enormous cult following, it succeeds brilliantly. Sometimes you just don't have the right release slot. And So I Married an Axe Murderer should not have been a summer movie. It's way too quirky. The characters are way too unusual. It was never going to be a summer smash. Because when you think of Mike Myers and summer box office, Austin Powers, it's not an accident that Austin Powers' summer movie. It's perfect because the laughs are frequent, it's on the nose, it's easy to digest. There are not quirky characters in Austin Powers. Everything is like this, and it works. So I Married an Axe Murderer, for reference, came out during the same summer as Jurassic Park, Arnold's Last Action Hero, which bombed, but also gained a significant cult following. That was another film that got reappraised, as did So I Married an Axe Murderer. The Fugitive with Harrison Ford opened the next week. In the Line of Fire with Clint, easily the biggest hit in Clint's entire career, same summer. Rookie of the Year, with Thomas Ian Nicholas as a kid who could suddenly throw 110 miles an hour. That was a bit of a surprise hit. Summer 93 just was crazy at the box office. And Searching for Bobby Fischer, an extraordinary film, was still to come. There were a lot of high-profile disasters in that summer. The Super Mario Brothers movie with the late Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, bombed. Dennis the Menace with Walter Matthau, not so good. Judgment Night with Dennis Leary, not so good. But the big movies, Coneheads also more or less bombed. The big movies, like Jurassic, like The Fugitive, like In the Line of Fire, but especially Jurassic and In the Line of Fire, were still rolling up huge box office when So I Married an Axe Murderer landed. And it hurt the film. It didn't get great reviews, but it didn't get the kind of reviews. I mean, Wayne's World didn't get great reviews. Wayne's World's not a great movie. It's okay. I never thought it was sensational. When I think of the movie, I think of Bohemian Rhapsody, a song by Queen, which it was 15 years old at the time, that suddenly, holy shit, greatest song ever. My senior year in high school, everybody was doing that song. We were singing it in hallways. Mama! Sorry, I'll spare you. I didn't just spare you. I apologize deeply and humbly for that attempt at singing. But So I Married an Axe Murderer just was a victim of circumstance and timing. And I hate to say this because I know Hollywood is cutthroat, but there seemed to be a sense that there were people in Hollywood who thought that Mike Myers needed to take a step down. And I feel like there were people within the industry who were actively hoping that the movie was going to fail. And I hate that. And there was some chatter similarly about Last Action Hero, but Last Action Hero was simply too far ahead of its time. It was too far ahead of its time. It was too clever for its own good. And audiences, as a decade plus earlier, they didn't want Harrison Ford in a movie like Blade Runner and rejected it at first. Audiences didn't want Arnold Schwarzenegger in a movie like Last Action Hero at first. And So I Married an Axe Murderer came out, and I don't even know if it made the top 10 in its opening weekend of release. That is how stacked summer 1993 was, with big blockbusters, and even, as I said, the movies that didn't quite do what they were expected to, but still did, relatively speaking, a lot better than So I Married an Axe Murderer. It didn't even gross back its production costs. Production budget and marketing, etc., was well over $20 million. The film grossed like $12 million. That's just horrendous. And given the talent involved and the really interesting performances by the leads, Nancy Travis as Harriet, hard-hearted harbinger of haggis, Mike Myers as Charlie McKenzie, Mike Myers as his dad, Mr. McKenzie, the great Brenda Fricker. She had been nominated for Oscar a few years earlier. She's a fucking scream as Mike Myers' mom. Anthony LaPaglia as his best friend, a cop. He's fantastic. The late Alan Arkin is hysterical as like the police chief, who is the nicest, kindest, gentlest, warmest, most wonderful police chief ever represented in film. What a sweetheart of a guy, and that's kind of the point. Charles Grodin in a cameo is also fucking scream. Everyone in the movie brings their A game. And before I forget, important to note, if you have not seen this movie, I'm not really going to spoil anything. The title kind of tells you we're in black comedy, screwball comedy, a little bit of horror film elements territory. The character of the father, Mike Myers reappropriated the accent he used for that character, who is very heavily Scottish. And he used it in Shrek. Shrek sounds like Old Man Mackenzie. He actually, at the first recordings of Shrek, from what I've read, he was even more, I don't want to say over the top, it's a Stallone movie, but the Scottish accent that Shrek spoke with was even more pronounced in the early moments of Mike Myers' recording. He was tone it down just a little. We like the direction. An ogre who speaks with a Scottish brogue, that's great, but it doesn't have to be this heavy. Just, less is more. So I Married an Axe Murderer found its audience on home video and cable, and it is a kind of film that you can revisit again and again. The characters are so quirky and distinctive, and it's really not about plot mechanics. It's about seeing these characters move through the space of San Francisco. And similar to another iconic film set in San Francisco, we're talking about Don Siegel's OG 1971 Dirty Harry. Thomas Schlamme, who ended up having a big career on television, was it ER? But Thomas Schlamme, who directed So I Married an Axe Murderer. San Francisco is a character in this film. And I appreciate when movies take the steps to not simply set a film in a certain town and forget about it, or a certain city and forget about it, but try to actively make the city breathe. And another 1993 film from the summer, which also underperformed at the box office. So if you ask me, what are the two best comedies from that summer? It ain't Coneheads, not Rookie of the Year, which I do enjoy, not Dennis the Menace. And there are other comedies that kind of underperformed. It's So I Married an Axe Murderer and Woody Allen's Manhattan Murder Mystery, which takes Manhattan and does the same thing with Manhattan that So I Married an Axe Murderer does with San Francisco, and that is make the city another character. Woody and Diane Keaton in Manhattan Murder Mystery as Carol and Larry Lipton, they are not simply living in the city and it's a random backdrop. No, they go to Madison Square Garden. They go to Metropolitan Opera House. They go to 21 Club. They go to the Downtown Athletic Club. They go to Bryant Park. They see Central Park. The city is alive in that movie. And San Francisco is alive in this movie. Maybe not something that would have landed when I was a younger person, but now it really does. I was not surprised when this film bombed because the advance buzz was negative, I think, because people wanted Myers to fail. But I just saw what else was out there, and my instinct, the film, if it doesn't get phenomenal rave reviews, it's not going to do that well. Probably won't even break even. I ended up being right. So I didn't see So I Married an Axe Murderer in theaters. Movies I saw in theaters that summer were the ones I said. I saw Jurassic, I saw Last Action Hero, I saw In the Line of Fire twice, and I saw The Fugitive. Didn't see Rookie of the Year, and I think that's it. And I did not, I saw Manhattan Murder Mystery in theaters, yes, which I think is phenomenal. It's maybe Woody Allen's just funniest film. I will, that's another hill I'll go down on. Manhattan Murder Mystery is every bit as good as Woody's kind of acknowledged classics. I think it's a better movie than Manhattan. I think Manhattan is wildly overrated. Manhattan Murder Mystery, Woody gets everything right, in large part because he has a powder keg, a live wire of energy and prodigious talent in Diane Keaton, and he stays the hell out of her way. Because a little of Woody goes a long way, no pun intended. And he knows this. And he cedes the spotlight to her, and she is just fucking incredible in that film. In this movie, Nancy Travis as the female lead, she's not great, but the character is a mystery. She is a bit of a cipher, a bit of an unknown quantity, and she plays that very well. This is not like a Diane Keaton comedic madcap screwball performance. Oh, I forgot Amanda Plummer is also great in So I Married an Axe Murderer, one of her last roles before playing Honey Bunny in Pulp Fiction. Hey, look at that. I just used two of my posters in a span of 5 minutes. But So I Married an Axe Murderer is the kind of movie it was inevitable was going to find the audience. And not just because Mike Myers has a big, and at the time had a big following of people who loved him from Wayne's World and from Saturday Night Live. Some of the incredible characters that he created on Saturday Night Live. Myers to me was always a very ingratiating presence. Somebody that wanted you to like him, but it was easy to like him because he came across like a regular guy. He didn't look like a TV star or a movie star. He's not conventionally a hot guy. He doesn't have like an incredible physique or really anything in particular other than the fact that he's funny and he has great timing. He has the ability to make what would seem on the paper to be obvious and unfunny. He has the ability to turn it into comedy gold. And this movie, So I Married an Axe Murderer, is not a story of huge belly laughs where, for example, the first Austin Powers I saw in theaters with my sister 4 summers later, and we were howling huge chunks of the film. Like, can't catch your breath. We were laughing so hard. So I Married an Axe Murderer is more subtle. There are big laughs, but this is the kind of film that when you revisit it, it's funnier. And that is something that can't be explained, and there's no way to bottle that up and do it elsewhere. But I didn't laugh that much. The first time I saw the movie, I was with my friends, Tom and Frank Steenkamp. We actually watched it at their house in Massapequa Park. They had rented it, and I sat through. I liked the movie a lot, but I really didn't laugh that much. Second time through watching it at home, I'm cracking up because I knew the parts that were coming up that were going to be funny. And Myers, in addition to Shrek, there are certain bits, and I won't spoil this, there are certain bits in this film that he repackaged, not only for Shrek, but he used again in slightly different formats in the first Austin Powers, cannibalizing his own material, so to speak. So the basic story here and the setup is, it's Alfred Hitchcock's Suspicion told as a black comedy screwball comedies. This movie straddles a lot of genres, and maybe some critics objected to that. They objected to the fact that there are some horror film elements, not supernatural, but serial killer type stuff. There are some horror film elements, there are elements of the black comedy, and there are screwball comedy elements. So the movie is doing a lot of different things at the same time. It could be construed as a bit of a mess. But Alfred Hitchcock, 1941, made a movie with our charming Cary Grant, the GOAT, the unquestioned GOAT, right? And Joan Fontaine, the sister of who, until she passed, had been the grand dame of Hollywood, Olivia de Havilland. Olivia de Havilland, if you want to Google somebody who changed fucking business for the better, Olivia de Havilland. Can't get into it. The de Havilland decision. Just Google that. De Havilland decision. So in the movie Suspicion, Joan Fontaine plays a young woman who meets super charming, hot guy, Cary Grant as John Aysgarth. Meets him. They fall in love. They get married. He may not be all there. He might be a sociopath. He might be psychotic. He might be planning to kill her. And maybe she loves him so much that she would wish for nothing more than to die at the hands and in the arms of the man she loves. That is Alfred Hitchcock's Suspicion. It's okay. Joan Fontaine, I believe, won Oscar for Best Actress. The movie's just okay. Anyone winning an Academy Award in a movie with Cary Grant should just give Grant the award. That's a rule. I want to go back 100 years and pass that rule. Because James Stewart won his only acting Oscar for being opposite Cary Grant in the Philadelphia Story. Cary Grant owns that film. When he is on screen with James Stewart ceases to exist. It is Cary Grant running the show, as only he can. But in Suspicion, the movie's not that great. It's not that great. It's a film where the reputation is better than the reality, in my opinion. And I'm as big a Hitchcock fan as you will ever find. I am a Hitchcock scholar. That is not an exaggeration. Do you know how many hundreds and hundreds of pages of material I studied and absorbed on films like Vertigo and Rear Window? A lot. I don't think Suspicion is even in Hitchcock's top 10. But the outline of the story, what I just described, that's So I Married an Axe Murderer. This is not a coincidence. Mike Myers knew what they were doing. Thomas Schlamme knew what they were doing. They made a remake of Suspicion 52 years later, set it in San Francisco, and let's make it a screwball comedy with horror film and serial killer film elements. So Charlie McKenzie, our intrepid hero, who, don't take this the wrong way if Mike Myers ever sees this, he doesn't seem to really have a job. He recites poetry. He's kind of a beat poet, if I'm allowed to say that. He's kind of a beat poet. He has a slot at the local coffee house, which is fucking awesome coffee house. He has this cappuccino that's like this size. Excuse me, I think I ordered the large cappuccino. Gold. But he doesn't seem to actually have a job. I guess it's possible, because this is not explained in the film, it's possible that his dad was so successful as butcher, or whatever it was that his father did. I like the way the mother says the word butcher. Butcher, let's go to the butcher, get some haggis. Maybe he's just got money for, who the fuck knows? It's not explained. But he doesn't really seem to have that much to do during the day. And he meets a butcher, played by Nancy Travis. They meet cute, sparks fly, and it's a classic scene when they get together. He's worried about going too fast because he's had a number of girlfriends his mom liked, he was very serious with. They went too fast, they had sex too quickly, whatever that is. I don't know what that means, but they had sex too quickly and flamed out, and, well, she smelled like Lipton's chicken noodle soup. What? These are the kinds of reasons why. He's afraid of commitment. He's a commitment phobe, right? That's what we get from this guy. They meet cute, and he falls head over heels in love with her, and she seems to love him. They got a good thing going, but there are these weird stories that keep popping up about Mrs. X. Charlie McKenzie becomes convinced that he's dating Mrs. X because she lived in Atlantic City. Mrs. X was there and killed somebody. Mrs. X bumped off a martial arts expert. Harriet seems to have had something with a martial arts expert. So there's all of these threads of a serial killer story that are taking place just off screen. And our intrepid hero becomes convinced that he's dating Mrs. X. And similar to the movie Suspicion, hey, if Joan Fontaine thinks that John Aysgarth, Cary Grant, is going to bump her off, what are you doing with him? Hello, as Mike Myers would say, hello. Or as Biff would say in Back to the Future, hello, McFly, anyone home? Think, McFly, think. If you think that she's Mrs. X, break up with her, turn around, and run. Don't do poetry and then try to get back with her if you're convinced I'm dating Mrs. X. Now, it wouldn't really be much of a comedy. It would have been a completely different film entirely, mild spoiler, if this was as simple as he does indeed marry an axe murderer and the film ends with her axing him to death, I guess. But no, there are twists and turns aplenty in the final third of the film. And I remember reading quotes from Mike Myers before the movie came out. See, in the mostly pre-internet era, I was the guy, I read Entertainment Weekly every week. I read Premiere Magazine. I read more heavy intellectual stuff like Film Comment. But Premiere Magazine had an interesting article on the film that teased the production issues that I mentioned. How the film seemed to be in trouble. There was an idea they're reshooting the ending. But Mike Myers said something which, if you forget all of that shit, if you forget the idea that people seem to be hoping that Mike Myers would fail, Myers himself said a couple of things which told me the film was fucked. The film ended up being way better than I would have predicted at the time. Because most of the time, and Arnold Schwarzenegger the same summer with Last Action Hero, he said a lot of stuff to deflect what was coming off, the heat on the movie, which was that they were in big trouble. But Mike Myers said he was talking about reworking the ending. And you don't like to read that because it means they know the film is in serious jeopardy. When you start talking about we have to reshoot the ending, you're fucked. You're fucked. But he said, the way that we shot it the first time through, the audience is so primed to laugh, we needed to give them more reason to do so. And I read that, and I understand that. I get what he's saying, but my heart sank because this movie's gonna bomb. If at this late date, if you're supposed to be wrapped and you're still figuring out how to make the ending sequence funnier, sorry, push the movie back. They maybe shouldn't have even attempted for a summer release date. I don't know. But it is a story of two people in love. One person falls under heavy suspicion. And where do we go from here? And you see, Sheldon just can't resist jumping on this desk. What can I say? My cat loves movies as much as I do, right, Sheldon? But So I Married an Axe Murderer is streaming free on the Philo, Philo, and AMC Plus. I know a lot of you get AMC Plus. It's available, for a couple of bucks on Apple and also Amazon Prime. I was never a big Saturday Night Live viewer. Let me just get this guy down here. Say hi, Sheldon. I watched it occasionally, but it's not the characters that Myers played on Saturday Night Live, with the exception of Wayne and Garth, ingenious, brilliant. I became a fan of his, I guess, through Wayne's World, and the fact that he clearly was a guy with prodigious talent. But I was also very surprised that Austin Powers became what it became. That turned into a franchise, an absolute cash cow of a franchise. That surprised a lot of people. Because in a similar vein to other films where the first movie in the series is not the biggest hit. Because dollar for dollar, Austin Powers 2 and Austin Powers 3 way outperformed the original. So I Married an Axe Murderer is a movie that I kind of wish they would do a legacy sequel to, because the principals are still around, still alive, and we just love to see what's going on with, spoiler alert, Charlie and Harriet more than 3 decades later. Since we know legacy sequels work, and this film has a massive cult following of mostly Gen Xers, but some young boomers. This is one of their movies. You'd be surprised how many people this film that bombed at the box office say, I love So I Married an Axe Murderer. And so does Sheldon. But So I Married an Axe Murderer, released July 31st, 1993, only has a 53% score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's not terrible, but it's not good. I believe that if it were released now, a movie like this would do a lot better. In the age of kind of the more ironic, people are even snarkier now than they were back then. A lot of the jokes, well, there is some topical humor, but the idea behind it, I think, would resonate more. And it's one of the reasons why younger people picking this film up for the first time, if you go on YouTube and you see movie reactors reacting to this film, in shock that this movie bombed. Same with Last Action Hero. You can't find a movie reactor seeing Last Action Hero for the first time within the last couple of years, not being dazzled, saying, I like this as much as Predator. I think this is as good as True Lies. Some films are products of their time, and then there are films which were, one reason or another, either ahead of their time or simply released at the wrong time. And that's the kind of the beauty and magic and terror of major studio Hollywood filmmaking, because a lot of it is closing your eyes and throwing a dart at a board. Wayne's World, I don't think Wayne's World is anywhere near as good a movie as So I Married an Axe Murderer. The release point for Wayne's World, coming out at a soft time of year, enabled it to do what it did. To put it another way, if Wayne's World is released with My Cousin Vinny and White Men Can't Jump in theaters, I do not think, Bohemian Rhapsody notwithstanding, I don't think that it does anywhere near as much business. No way to prove me right or wrong, but that's just the sense that I get. Came out at a time where the box office was soft. There were no big studio comedies at that juncture, and it hits and goes crazy. And they made a sequel, Wayne's World 2, which is not that good. Unlike Austin Powers 2, which arguably is a better movie than the first one. Goldmember, I like the celebrity cameos, but other than that, not so good. But So I Married an Axe Murderer, box office bomb, massive cult classic, is now 31 years old. I hope Mike Myers makes a sequel. I don't even know if it's on the boards. He's probably more likely to do another Austin Powers film, so it's a more guaranteed box office hit. So I Married an Axe Murderer, directed by Thomas Schlamme, starring Mike Myers, Nancy Travis, Mike Myers, Brenda Fricker, Anthony LaPaglia, Alan Arkin, Amanda Plummer, and in a phenomenal cameo, the late, great Charles Grodin. This has been episode 262 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Thursday morning here with me in New York. If you catch this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.